Hey folks, Jason Duke's Dirt Race Life. In this video for our street stock build, we're going to draw out our roll center. We're going to figure out where we want it, why we want it there, and what changes we'll need to make in order to achieve that on our front end for our car. Stick around. So there's a couple of measurements that we're going to need to have in order to draw this out on the board. We're going to need those pivot points for the inside of the lower control arm, the pivot points for the inside of the upper control arm. This is a 4-point box that you're going to draw, and I found the easiest way to do this is to take a sheet of construction paper and just take these measurements, these distances and the height differences between them, and cut that out into a box that would represent this, this area, with each point being on there. The lower control arm, just the distance, like for this one it's 17.5 inches, and what I'm using is just a 1-inch strip that's straight for it. Same deal on the upper control arms. I'm just using a 1-inch piece of construction paper that's cut for it. We'll see that up here on the board in a second. So you get these cut out. And then the other thing you'll need to know is the height to your lower control arm points from the ground. And you'll need to know where your tire contact patch is. And the way you do that, you take a straight edge. Remember, the camber's been set, so a straight edge on the hub face down where it contacts the ground. That line represents your hub face. And then the center of your wheel would be what the tire contact patch is for your roll center measurement. And so for me, I'm going to run 8-inch rims. My baseline setup is on 4-inch offset. So it'd be 4 inches out, which is half of an 8-inch rim. So that's very simple. It's in the center. Keep in mind, this is going to be different from the passenger side to the driver's side, because we have negative camber on this side, positive camber on that, so that rotor is turned and that's moving that line in relationship to the car. So those aren't the same side to side. The lower control arm ball joint height, for us that's simple because we set the car completely level. But if you didn't have it level and you wanted to be up or down or turned from that, you'll just take those measurements and create whatever that box is and represent it. With those measurements, we've created, here is this 4-point center section. So here are my lower control arm inner pivot points. I've created lower control arms that I can just move around. I just use stick-on magnets on these pieces of construction paper, just low budget, simple. So lower control arm points here. My upper control arm points, this black, the top of this black line right here, that's where the top of the frame is. In its unaltered state, my upper control arms, the way they're sitting, this is the top where the pivot would be. And then I've set what I believe is going to be my baseline starting point, which would be after I trim these. That blue line is me actually trimming those down. And you can see I'm trimming those down. I have set both of these upper control arms on this diagram at 10 degrees. Now right now, the way they are on the car, they're sitting at about 12 degrees. That's with no trimming for anti-dive or anything on the control arms mounts themselves. Also, I haven't done any reaming to set my ball joints down into my spindles any further. Nothing like that. They're just sitting at roughly 12 degrees. And I want some room. I'm going to lower everything to a certain extent because I want some room to get the angles that I want to get out of it. But like I said, set it up at 10 degrees, 10 degrees. And so when we look at this, here's how roll center works. So there's an imaginary line that comes through your upper control arm across. And so what I've got is the center line of the upper control arm, and I've drawn a line that's coming across here. And then there's an imaginary line that's coming from your lower control arm across. And so since my lower control arms on this setup on the fixture are completely level, I've just got a blue line I put on my board all the way across. This intersection of the upper control arm and the lower control arm, that point where the two contact each other is called the instant center. So what you do is you figure out what that is. So here it is over here. Then I do the same thing over there. The instant center is there. The roll center is when you take from the instant center to your tire contact patch on each side, where those two cross, that's the roll center. And you see right now with this car sitting level, both of the control arms are sitting at the same heights. They're both sitting at 10 degrees. And you see it's putting my roll center in the middle here. And that makes sense. That's not where we're going to run it. So where are we going to run it? Well, my ideal target that I'm after is from 2 to 4 inches above ground. This is our ground level right here represented. I want to be 2 to 4 inches above it, and I want to be 2 to 4 inches toward the driver's side. So let's take a look. We're about 3.5 inches above ground. For my setup I typically am running dry slick, smooth tracks during features. I want this roll center to be above ground, and I also am looking for it to not be extreme between my rear and my front. I know I'll have a very high rear roll center, and so I don't want this roll center to be below ground for that reason. So I'm at 2 to 4 inches. I know 3.5 is kind of, that's a little bit high, but that's fine. It's kind of a target. These are rough measurements, so we're really working after a zone here, not necessarily an exact number. So I'm fine with that. Now here's an important point. We're going to move this toward the driver's side. Now I want to move it towards the driver's side because a roll center that's moved toward the driver's side will create a softer feel on the front end. It's better for low bank, a low grade in the bank of the turn, dry slick, smooth. A roll center that is toward the passenger side is better for a high traction, high bank, tacky type tracks where you've got a lot of grip. Another important point is as the car rolls over in the turn, this roll center will travel in the direction of the roll. So I don't want to move this roll center way over to an extreme point in the car as it's traveling to it. Then it starts acting differently during that roll. And so I'm targeting to be over here at 2 to 4 inches over, because as I roll the car over, I know I'm going to sweep over here to 2 to 4 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to create this very neutral driving car. There's another characteristic that I'm doing this for, I want to stay in this middle zone, is I believe that a car that doesn't have an extreme roll center change going on is more drivable in traffic. And so you run into situations where you're in a race and you're approaching a slower car at a very rapid clip, and you may have to turn your car intentionally right instead of left. And if you've got a real extreme setup, extreme shocks on your car, something really crazy going on with this front end, upsetting your car can be a catastrophe. You know, so and some of you that have raced know, if you've got, you may have a really fast setup on, but if it's really finicky and you do something like that where you're trying to dodge some slower traffic or something, or you're trying to dodge a wreck, you can upset the car so bad that, you know, then you end up with your car getting out from under you. First rule of racing, you have to keep your own car under you. It doesn't matter what your speed is. First you keep it under you, then you find the speed. So for that reason, I'm looking to stay in this zone. How do we move it? Well, here's how we move it. Upper control arms, as we add angle to this upper control arm down toward the center, the roll center will move in that direction. Right now I'm at 10 and 10, but I'm going to change this to be at 10 and 12. Now as we add more angle, it raises the roll center, but the angle that is greater, whichever side, it moves it in that direction. So I'm going to raise it up a little more, but it's going to travel towards the driver's side by doing that. So let's do that right quick. So I changed that from 10 to 12. And so now my line, my imaginary line, has moved toward the car in relation to the lower control arm. And so now it's here. And so now my instant center, that imaginary line is going to come up. And so if you look, now at 12 degrees, that's a 2-degree difference. I moved off center, and now my roll center is 3 inches toward the driver's side by putting a 2-degree difference. Again, more angle downhill, whichever side that's on, it's driving the roll center in that direction. More angle in general is raising your roll center. Okay? So those are simple rules. As you get really extreme with this, you'll find that the roll center will start moving around and moving in opposite directions. It will. I'm putting that disclaimer out there. If you run the software and you start getting really crazy, it's dancing around as your car goes through the turn anyway. So that's why I say we're looking for a zone, an area. But at 10 and 12 right here, we've raised it up. Now, we were at 3.5. Now we're at 3 3/4. And so we're at 3 3/4, about 3 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark that because I want to demonstrate something here. Get your head wrapped around this. If you understand what the roll center is doing, that is going to empower you to make better decisions about how to improve your car's handling. So it's all about understanding every part of what's going on with your car. That's what empowers you. In the turn, your car is turned over, and so let's simulate that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn this car 3 degrees. We're going to take it and go 3 degrees, and that's a pretty good bit for a street stock. Now late models, you'll get up 5 degrees or more, but 3 degrees is going to be probably about what I'm looking at. And specifically, we're in the turn. We're going to compress the right front, and we're not going to extend the left front. So we're going to compress the passenger side. We're not going to extend the driver's side. And so what I'll do here is I'm just going to take and drop this down. Now I'm not moving my control arms because I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to keep my line. Put my scale on. And I'm maintaining this lower control arm point right here. There it is. Okay. So we've compressed it 3 degrees. And we compressed it in our right front. So now it gets a little squirrely now. Okay, so there's a couple things to note. This height is going to stay the same because this tire is staying the same. But this control arm has raised. It's going to be right there. Do you see this? There's a gap right here. That gap actually, what that is, that's right there. That's camber loss happening right there. And you can measure that. And you got to remember, you have spindle inclination, so the exact measurement you get isn't what's at the wheel because you have spindle inclination. But the difference, the change in it is real camber loss. That is what your car is going to do. You're going to have camber loss. And that's the reason, like, I'm going to run 2 degrees on the left front because at full extension, I'll still be, on between 0 and 2 degrees. I'll lose a 1/2 degree per inch of extension. And so even in full roll, I'll still be at 1 degree of positive camber with this car. So here's our line now. Same deal over here. That height stays the same. That angle changes significantly. There it is. All right. So now all we got to do is reline up all our lines. And some of my strings might not be long enough, but we can get close enough. Just trying to kind of understand what it's doing here. All right, so big changes. big changes here. So again, all I'm doing is I'm following my control arms, the angles on them. And let's see, I've got you, I've got you. All right. So, and this lower control arm is creating a point. This lower control arm is still this horizon line I've created. But this lower control arm now is pointing downhill. So let's take a straight edge and figure out what that is. I don't have enough magnets and strings for this, folks. But we're going to get there. All right, so here's this imaginary line right here. There it is. Oh. All right, put this back. Okay, so lower control arm, upper control arm, right there. Here's my instant center. It has moved like 24 inches there. It has came in. Tire contact patch. All right, so there it is. There's from my instant center to it from this one. So it really shortened up. Now, upper control arm, lower control arm. It's actually off of my board. Might be better to do this on a big wall where you could get it with some really long strings. But I'm just going to approximate where that would be. That would be about right there. And so this new roll center is way over here. Okay. So height-wise, about the same, about 3 inches. So we dove on this side, and we only dropped to about three and a quarter. But look how much this moved. So this was 3 degrees, and this roll center moved 11 inches. Now, can you see why that if you were already over here, this roll center is coming way over? All right, and so that brings up a really important point. Let's talk about real world. Well, how does the car act because of it? Well, think about this. If this roll center was out here at this wheel, okay, and so this is your passenger side, that's what the car is pivoting on the front, right? So now, as I'm rolling over, I'm no longer applying weight to my right front. I'm not applying any weight to my right front. I'm just removing weight from my left front. So now, all I'm doing is picking up my left front tire. And we don't want to pick a tire up off the ground. What we want to maximize our traction across our front. Remember, the more traction that you can put in the front of the car, the more drive you can create in the back and still get the car turned. So that's why the front end is so important to a fast car. Cars are fast in the turn. If you make a car fast in the turn, you're fast everywhere. So we have our measurements. We're going for 10 and 12. We also are going to take this distance measurement right here, and we're going to trim our arms down to make this our pivot of our control arm points. And we'll recreate this on the car. We have a plan for our roll center. 10 degrees on the driver's side, 12 degrees on the passenger side. We also know how much to trim our mounts themselves by, which brings us to our next video coming, which is anti-dive. So we're going to discuss how to take anti-dive and use it in order to modify our spring rate during corner entry. And the reason that ties in as the next step is because we're going to cut our angles into our mount to both arrive at the height we need for the angles here, but also the angles front to back for anti-dive. And at that point, we're welding these on. So if you like what you see here, let me know. Leave me a comment, tell me what you're looking for, and please subscribe. Thank y'all.